Right, welcome back to the Young Fan Podcast and welcome to another League One roundup. Game week 31. It didn't disappoint, did it? It was pretty incredible. In fact, normally we do 4 games. We are going to be doing 5 selected games today because it's just simply unfair to discriminate some of the matches that just were pretty mind-blowing. Let me know in the comment section down below, how are you feeling? I imagine because with all these quite incredible games, there's going to be some happy and some not so happy League One supporters. Do let me know. I'll be replying and responding to all of those as per usual. Please do leave a like and subscribe. We're now sort of pushing through the 4,000s when it comes to subscribers here on YouTube. So be part of the journey. Hit that subscribe button. It's free to do so. And never be missing out on the content. You can do that by hitting that bell as well. That notification bell will give you a little alert whenever I go live or do a recorded episode just like this one. Let's get into it because, like I said, we've got some games, some big games to chat about. Starting off with the biggest of them all, some would say. Not many. So it finishes MK Dons 1, Oxford United 1. The XG for the game 0.92 to Oxford's 0.97. Now, I did do a little bit of a match reaction on the radio after the game on BBC Radio Oxford. I'm so grateful for getting those kind of opportunities. And I said, when describing the game, I felt a little bit meh. And I also said, that's not a great word, and I 100% understand it's a pretty horrendous word when breaking down a game of football, but it is sort of how I feel, a little bit meh. How do I feel? I'm not really sure. I feel a little bit deflated, but not as deflated because we didn't lose the game. The losing streak does come to an end if we're looking at the real positives, but we are still winless in the last 5, 1 point from 15. It's still woeful form. And when you look at the league table, which we'll come on to in just a second, it does put Oxford in still a almighty amount of difficulty. It really, really does. As for MK Dons, we knew that their home record was pretty horrendous as well, so we were sort of also seeing if we can capitalise on that. And as well, MK Dons versus Oxford United last season, what a game that would have been. It couldn't be further away from that type of game yesterday. Sort of. I mean, it was better than I thought it was going to be, but on face value, by looking at the table, by looking at the form, by looking at both of these clubs' actual seasons so far, there was such a difference in a gulf, but a difference in quality between both of our seasons this year and last season, both pushing for the top 6 this season, trying to stay in Sky Bet League One, which is a horrendous thing to be saying and horrifying as a football fan, but it is the truth, and you can't shy away from that. By looking at the graph here as well, first half, Oxford were pretty horrendous. We were very, very bad. We were getting absolutely pegged back at every occasion. I thought we were getting pummeled with opportunities. In fact, the MK Dons just kept coming forward. We could not settle. We got caught in transition on so many occasions. I thought the way that they got in behind, they used the fullbacks or the poor quality of our fullbacks when defending really, really well. And what I mean by that is, although Fleming, I think, can defend, although Anderson can defend as well, the positioning of those players, defensively, they're all over the shop, and they definitely smelt blood, MK Dons, when they saw that. Anderson and Fleming, like I said, are actually quite accomplished players. However, when you're playing them as that attacking, you're going to get caught so many times in behind. The ball's over the top. The wide players, in fact, I've got the names on here. Leko was one of them. Sonny Kaikai, who scored the goal as well. He was the goal was he was actually cutting in from the left-hand side and sort of bending it into the bottom right, but that came from fluidity, and that's the word that we've been sort of not using enough when it comes to Oxford, unfortunately. We're not fluid going forward. MK Dons for a side who are really, really struggling, especially in that first half, did look really fluid, and much more fluid than Oxford did when going forward. They looked like they could create a chance out of nothing, really, use the pace of the wingers, and like I say, it exposed the fact that our wing-backs, although they are good players, they were struggled at times yesterday. They got caught out on so many occasions, and that will be a big concern. Tactically, the shape, I think, was a big problem. And by looking at the team selection as well, we went with a more attacking 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to call it, with Lewis Bate and Brannigan as sort of the holding double pivot, and then with Murphy and Atif Kanate as well. We tried to sort of go really on the front foot. We know we've been struggling when it comes to a lack of goals, and that was maybe the thinking behind it. Play lots of attacking players, but as I said yesterday, that seems quite naive because in that first half we had to bring Marcus McGuane on. At half-time, but in the first half we saw we had to do that because we were getting caught on so many occasions. We couldn't win the midfield battle. We weren't breaking up the play. And like I said, we were getting caught in transition and we were getting pummeled with the amount of attacks coming forward because we couldn't win the game. We couldn't settle. We couldn't gain any control. And that again comes down to the fact that we had no players in there. Lewis Bate and Brannigan, I think, are more effective when they're driving forward, when they're bursting into the penalty area. Lewis Bate, I think, can do that, playing as a more holding player. But he isn't that sort of physical, dirty work presence that we might need in there. He's a top player. He was man of the match for me yesterday. He scored his first professional goal. It was some strike as well, and I really like Lewis Bate. In fact, I think he's one of the best players, if not the best player this season for Oxford. And it's such a shame that he's on loan, and that says quite a lot about Oxford going forward in the long term. But I like Lewis Bate, and he had a great game. But what I mean by the fact that in that midfield, we didn't have that real holding number 6 traditionally that can break up the play and do that dirty work. And that was a concern before the game. And we knew that was going to be a big problem. We had to be proactive, and Robinson had to do something, arguably reactive, because we were 1-0 down at half-time, bringing Marcus McGuane on. And I think we could have all have maybe have seen that coming. But the idea, I think, was, can we be 2-0 up at half-time? And that point wasn't going to be proven. But unfortunately, it was proven that we were going to be in deep trouble if we were going to get caught off, and we were on multiple occasions. In fact, I've got my notes here as well from the game yesterday. And I used the word sort of lack of control, and we couldn't gain any type of momentum or rhythm in the game whatsoever in that first 45. Second half, there was a reaction. There needed to be a reaction. They desperately did. And actually, as well, I was a little bit nervous to see how these sort of fans were going to react to the fact the team were 1-0 down. And I wasn't at the game. I was watching it from home. And even myself, I was thinking, how are these players going to react to maybe the fans not being too pleased, and quite rightly not being too pleased, because that first half was really poor. How are they going to come out? How are they going to react? They actually reacted really well. They did, and we did have multiple chances. We were lucky to only be 1-0 down at half-time, if I'm being honest, but that's the scoreline, that's the way it is. In the second half, we did look better. We did come out with a bit of a front-footed action. We made a substitute at half-time. I think it was exactly at half-time. Murphy came off for Marcus McGuane, so clearly there was a need for a change, and Robinson felt that as well. Goodrum came on, looked lively. Wilshere came on, looked really, really good as well. And he sort of does have these moments, and I was speaking about Yannick a couple of times, and I have done quite recently, when you get him playing on a consistent basis with his consistency, he's a top player. You can see how good he is. He'd like to drive at players. He's quite a physical presence as well, but he's not slow. But like I said, that word consistency, and that is one that we could be using across Oxford season, across individuals and the team. That is what we're lacking. We really, really are. And when Wilshere is playing at that level, you can see he's a real danger. And I thought he was really, really good. I thought he came on and gave us something a little bit different. He caused MK Dons a lot of problems. For once, we actually had a winger taking players on. We took their fullbacks on, something that Lecco was doing, that Kai was doing. They were taking our fullbacks on. Yes, they got exposed on multiple occasions because of how high they were, but we were actually sort of trying to take these players on and not just whipping these random balls in, because Tyler Smith, we haven't even spoken about Tyler Smith since he joined the football club, really, because one, he hasn't scored a goal and he's a striker, but two, because he hasn't really ever got in the game. Again, the delivery, it's more than just a striker. It's down to creativity. It's down to the lack of creativity. And these strikers, it's a graveyard shift. It really, really is, because you're not giving those players opportunities. It's so naive to think that by just getting a striker gone in Matty Taylor, bringing in somebody who is pretty much the same height, same physicality, a bit quicker, a bit younger, you're not just going to score goals. You're not going to score goals. You've got to give them the service. And unfortunately, until Wilshere came on, we never really got that. Lewis Bates got a brilliant goal, and the game finished 1-1. And you can see the last 20 minutes we were sort of huffing and puffing. But that first 45, we've got to remember, we were pretty poor and could have been more than 1-0 down. Looking at the league table then, I said I would at the start. We'll briefly look at the stats, but not much to write home. Again, glaringly obvious, shots on target from 15 is not ideal. We actually didn't have the majority of possession, which by looking at that lineup was something that we were trying to do. Again, tactically maybe a little bit silly with going that many attacking players on there with, that... the lack of players to maybe break up the play in a defensive area. But anyway, looking at the league table here, Oxford United 16th after that draw, MK Dons 20th after that draw. Again, the games in hand is something that I always sort of look at when looking at Oxford in particular. 31 games we've played. A lot of sides below us have only played 29. They've got 2 games in hand, of course. Burton and Fleetwood don't have to guarantee they're going to win those games, but they're looking in decent form, much better than Oxford's. You expect that they would get something from these next 2. I don't know the exact fixtures they've got, but you'd like to think they get maybe 1 win from those 2, or maybe even a point makes it quite tight, because it's so close down there. I don't think we're going to get relegated. Maybe that's, again, a little bit arrogant of me, but I don't think we will. I think this squad can keep us in the league. I'm a firm believer of that, but there's no doubt we're in more of a relegation battle than we are anything else, and that has to be our priority. We have to look at the situation on face value. We're struggling, and we've got to deal with that right away. And that can only come from performances. We haven't got a transfer window. That's got to come from the manager. He's under pressure, of course. Every single game we don't get a result. And arguably, when we do get a result, he's still, I don't know whether or not he's got the ability to win the fans back. Plymouth on Tuesday is going to be more than a big test. It's going to be a huge test for Oxford. We are at home. Does that make a difference? Maybe. It's still going to be a massive challenge for Oxford. Can we see through that? Right now, I'm short of confidence. I am. Right then, let's move on. MK Dons versus Oxford chat went on a little bit longer than we expected, but I think there's a lot of talking points there. And by the way, MK Dons in that first half, we saw that they can be good. When those heads drop, the poor home record, you felt that it just went a little bit flat, and that confidence was just like, do they stick or twist? That's what it felt like for me. Right then, let's go to Wycombe Wanderers, because they were part of a thriller, a 5-goal thriller against Derby County, who were in sublime form coming into this game. Wycombe 3, Derby County 2. The XG for the game 1.28 to Derby's 1.94. I did watch the goals back. Some actually pretty good goals, actually. Some really, really good goals. Sam Vokes' one was a little bit of a deflected effort that sort of fell to his feet, and it was still a very professional finish, but that's what Sam Vokes can do. He's a clinical fox-in-the-box type of striker, and he did definitely tuck it away with that level of confidence. Lewis Wing, I thought he was really good. He scored 2 goals, one from outside or just inside the penalty area, nearly on the edge of the area. I think it was just inside the box, and it was a really good finish. No one really marking him, no one tracking that run that he was making, and a good first-time finish into the left-hand side of the goal. And then a flicks goal, really, a ball in the area, and he just sort of flicked it quite near post into the back of the net, and that was a good impact from Lewis Wing, who did score 2 very important goals in the game. As for Derby County, James Collins scored a goal. Lewis Dobbin as well. I thought, actually, McGoldrick came on. That ball in from McGoldrick to James Collins was really, really good. He actually twisted and turned, used his body really, really well, turned his man. Brilliant ball into the penalty area. The quality of McGoldrick and actually the finisher of James Collins that we know he's got there. It was a really, really well-worked goal. 2 very experienced heads there, McGoldrick and Collins, working together for that equaliser very quickly into the 60th minute. So not that quickly into the second half, but a good time to score. They were 1-0 down at half-time. Derby County, Sam Vokes made it 1. But and again, it comes down to, by looking at the graph here, it was really quite end-to-end. Both sides did have chances. In terms of the quality of game, it was good. As the neutral, it was really good. As a Wycombe fan, I imagine it was absolutely brilliant. Derby will feel disappointed by it. But you can't write Wycombe off, and it's a classic case of Wycombe. And I think I said it. I don't know whether or not I've got my prediction in front of me. I don't think I do. But I said I wouldn't be surprised if Wycombe gets something from this game, because you absolutely cannot write them off under Gareth Ainsworth. These type of games, they absolutely thrive. They love these games because people will say they're written off, people say they're massive underdogs, and that underdog mentality is what they use so well. That's why they're going to get results against quite a few sides, and have done this season, because of that underdog write them off mentality that they absolutely use to their advantage. And they did it again yesterday. Derby didn't have a bad game, you'd say. They did look fairly good. The goals they scored were good. But they conceded 3 because Wycombe, they do what Wycombe do best. They absolutely do. You can see by looking at the statistics here as well, 57% possession to the away side once again. Is that a surprise? No, Wycombe don't like having the ball, but they still create 14 shots, 7 on target, and win the game 3-2. That's what Wycombe Wanderers do very, very well. Is it the most attractive? I mean, arguably yesterday, you'd say scoring 3 goals. For Wycombe, that's really quite attractive. That's not a disrespectful thing to say. Normally, Wycombe will win this type of game 1-0, 2-1, maybe 2-0. But to win 3-2, they committing players forward. They scored quite a few goals as well. You can see Wycombe's form is quite exciting. They have got 1 game played more than Barnsley, which won't really help them, considering only 3 points away from that top 6. But we'll have to wait and see. It is very, very tight. As for Derby County, they have played 29 games. That loss doesn't really affect them too much in terms of their top 6 finish, but they were still trying to push and sort of chase the likes of Bolton, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, and potentially Plymouth. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly to push into that top 2, that defeat will be quite tough and quite a blow, you'd say. We're looking at the statistics as well. Where are they? Just on the left-hand side here. Again, 14 shots to 13, so fairly close. Quite similar when it comes to shots on target as well. 2 big chances each. Like I said, it was fairly end-to-end. Lots of chances for both of these football clubs. Both of these chances, all the chances that came were really, really good. And I think 3-2. Derby, I feel they maybe could have done a little bit better. Before the game, maybe after it as well. But it is still, I think, a good advert for League One football, especially from an attacking perspective. You can see by looking at the XG as well, Derby might feel as though they could have done a little bit better with defending one or 2 of those goals and scoring 1 more. The XG does suggest they did have a couple more of the opportunities across the 90 minutes. But there we go. Wycombe Wanderers 3, Derby County 2. Don't write Wycombe off, because again, they're shocking sides like Derby County, who are still, of course, very, very good, but were in extremely good form coming into this game. Right then, Peterborough United against Bolton Wanderers. Who saw this one coming? I certainly didn't. 5-0 to Bolton. And not because I don't rate Bolton. I'm not surprised necessarily that Bolton won the game, because they've got real quality in that side. Look at their league position. Look at their form. But 5-0 away from home. The XG, 1.14 for Peterborough United, 3.62 for Bolton Wanderers. Bolton were just a different level. they were a different level. They were clinical with the chances they had, really, really clinical. 2 goals from the skipper, Ricardo Santos. Not both headers either. I watched the last one back. It was a striker's finish, wasn't it? It was a lethal striker's finish, side of the foot, into the roof of the net, or sort of along those lines. A really, really good strike from him. And, in the box, finishing his dinner. Exactly what the strikers do. And talking about strikers, Dylan Charles, of course, scored a hat-trick. He has to be given full credit for that. He was really, really good. Of course, 2 of those were penalties. Were they both penalties? For me, they were. I thought as well, is it Sheer Tere? Was he playing as that number 10? He was playing actually up front with Dylan Charles here, apparently. But he looked really lively. He looked really, really lively. Although maybe he didn't get the rating or didn't get... Did he get any assists? I think he did. I don't think he actually got any goal contributions directly. From watching some of the aspects of the game back, I thought he looked quite lively. Won both of the penalties, I believe. Certainly one of them. I think he did win both. He was really, really good. And in fact, we can get the stats of him winning penalties here, I believe. We might not be able to. He was fouled on 6 occasions. 2 of those fouls... He's been apparently was fouled 6. Oh, okay, he did 2 fouls, 6 fouls against. Interesting, but you can see by just looking at some of those creative stats as well, all over the pitch, he was really, really good. I think as a young player, he's lively, he's exciting, he's desperate to make this work out because it is his first loan, I think it is. You want him to shine. I think he looks like a really dangerous player, quite tricky. And he won both those penalties because he weaved his way into the penalty area and forced Peterborough to make a challenge. But no, I saw a couple of people say Bolton Wanderers shouldn't be disrespected, and people disrespecting Bolton before the game said it was going to be quite a close game. I mean, I don't buy into that. I mean, Peterborough were 3 wins in the last 3 games on 44 points, certainly still in the race for the top 6. Bolton, I think I said 2-2, and the reason why I said 2-2 is because these are 2 sides. Peterborough at home, they're sort of got they're different things to battle for. Peterborough pushing into the top 6 or trying to. Bolton trying to stay in those playoff places and have the ability to do so. And the reason why I said that was because I think they've both got so much to fight for. But Bolton, they did the job to an extremely high level. Peterborough were, of course, very, very bad, and Bolton took their chances. Interesting as well, Peterborough, losing 5-0, had more shots, only 6 on target. Although, Peterborough was sloppy and poor, very poor, bad, very bad. Bolton were very clinical and took their chances. They had 7 shots on target. Of course, they scored 5 goals. So, and 2 of those were penalties. So, there is that. But I'm not taking anything away from Bolton. They, of course, were cracking. And also, as well, look at the odds as well. This sort of disrespect, 47% to 29%. So, Bolton weren't massively back before the game. And they shut people up. They really, really did. And they have to, of course, be given huge credit for that. But yeah, one to remember for Bolton, and that's a real statement. A real statement. I think we've said in the past about Bolton maybe not being as good when the pressure's on, when it really, really matters. Talk about bottling it on a couple of occasions this season, or maybe not being as professional at certain times during the campaign. I think Derby County was a recent one where they lost the game 2-1. They didn't turn up, and in terms of games to turn up or not turn up, that's the one to do so. And yesterday was another one where they had to get the job done, and they did to an extremely high level. So fair play to Bolton. And Peterborough, disappointing. First real challenge for Ferguson since he rejoined the football club. He failed, and failed fairly miserably, you'd say. And of course it ends Plymouth 3, Portsmouth 1. The XG for the game 2.21 to Pompey's 1.8. I've written down here next to Plymouth's notes, potential champions when it comes to mentality. And what I mean by that is, when things got a little bit nervy, Plymouth, they did what potential champions would go on and do and kill the game off and seal the points. When Pompey got one back at 2-1, there were nerves, as you would imagine. They actually had to weather a couple of Portsmouth storms when it comes to attacks after that 2-1 goal. But went up the other end, Plymouth, and sealed the deal and scored the third and final goal of the game. And like I said, sealed the 3 points. That's what sides of top quality and potential champions, as I've just said, go on and do, in my eyes. And I'm an Oxford fan, so I have no bias in this whatsoever. Let's have a little look then at the league table after that. We don't normally go this early on the league table, but I think you can see Plymouth actually the last 5 games a little bit inconsistent. However, that win does play a big role, especially we'll come to Sheffield Wednesday and their fairly big game against Ipswich with a lot of drama as well. Stay tuned. Winning that game is really important, and now once again top of the table. Of course, Sheffield Wednesday do have that game in hand. They could regain top spot Wednesday, but Plymouth, they have to win what's in front of them. And Pompey was never going to be an easy game. What I mean by maybe that potential champions and the ability to go and steal the game off, and I think Tom said it really well from 4-0 written over it. That's his shout out, of course. He gets one in every single roundup, and so he should. Definitely go and watch his vlog. I got a lot from this game and breaking down this game from that video, so definitely go and check it out. I think the quality plays a big role, and sometimes you can sort of sort of look at a game too hard and sort of analyse a game too much. Sometimes it just comes down to a golfing quality and a sheer difference when it comes to the players on the pitch, and also the amount of time these players have had to got used to this new era. Plymouth have had Stephen Schumacher as part of Plymouth for a long time. He was assistant, then took on the first team manager role, has now had a summer transfer window, or maybe 2 summer transfer windows, certainly one, on his own actually. I think he's only had one sort of as a manager summer transfer window. Of course, he had others as assistant, and then he had January, the last January, where he really did strengthen the squad. He's had time to establish and build a squad now, his squad, that's doing, of course, just by looking at the league table and by looking at performances, very, very well. So, and then you compare it to Portsmouth. They didn't play badly. They weren't horrendous. You can see their XG, 1.8 against 2.21. Of course, it is slightly lower, but it's not. They didn't get battered. They had a chance. They had a couple of sniffs. There was a couple of opportunities to make it 2-2, like I said. But again, Plymouth have that ability to go on the other end and seal and win the game and kill it off. But, John Messina is very early in his tenure, very early in his time there. He's still got to build his squad. He's still got to sort of send those messages over to his players. And that's not going to be a short-term thing. It's not going to be a case of winning 2 games like he did, the first 2 that he had in charge, and then just winning every moment from that onwards. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take transfer windows. Paddy Lane probably should have started the game. He'll learn from that. I would be surprised if he doesn't play in the next one. I think if you look at that front 3, probably start him instead of Jacobs. Dale, maybe his output's a problem, but he's a lively player. Bishop, of course, a top striker. Didn't score yesterday, but he's somebody that when he does have opportunities, he'll take them. I thought a couple of mistakes cost him. Marlon Pack didn't have his best game. Sean Raggett, a lot of question marks over him. These are all players that have got to either move on or not play as part of this Messina era, maybe in the summer, because you're not going to make those changes now. You can't make those changes now. Or adapt to the way that he wants to play and see through, assess the squad, and then there will be quite a big turnover, over the summer. But I think you've got to look at it now at this point and go, right, Plymouth are a very, very good side. They've had a lot of time to build exactly what they want, and they won the game 3-1. Ryan Hardy scored a good goal, Ryan Hardy, in the 4th minute of injury time. And that's what he does. He's a top striker, and he was very close to signing for Oxford, believe it or not. If you know, you know. But again, the key players, Fanazaz, I thought we know what player he is, 2-0. We always could highlight him. Cosgrove, again, who's going to be that number 1 striker. He went with Ryan Hardy and Cosgrove. Cosgrove was that part of that front 2, scored the first goal in the 24th minute. But yeah, there's more to this game. It's quite difficult, but I think patience will be a big part of where Pompey want to go in the future. And I think Plymouth have had to maybe see through that, and now of course, we're seeing a top side. And also as well, big absences. Cooper, of course, Scar isn't in that back 3 either due to injury. I think Cooper's out for the rest of the season. I think Scar's out for 5 to 6 weeks. These are long-term injuries and season-ending injuries for some. Of course, that's a big blow. But again, they saw through that and won the game in the end, comfortably. But looking at the stats and the league table, we can look at both. They're both on the screen. 54% possession, 23 shots, Portsmouth. And that's what I mean, 23 shots. They did have a go. They weren't outplayed. They did have moments. But the big one being there, 4 shots on target. You cannot have 23 shots in total and only have 4 on target. You've got to test the goalkeeper. You've got to force them to make a good save, force them to be concerned. They're not going to be concerned when you have 23 shots, but only 4 on target. You can see Plymouth not much better. I'd say a little bit. Well, it is better, but nearly 9 shots on target from 20 total shots. Yeah, it comes down to being much better in the final third, I think, actually. Portsmouth, they're being a little bit more clinical. A few scrappy moments where they probably should have just tucked the ball away. And on another day, maybe they do so. But there you go. Pompey actually now, looking at the form, haven't won a game in the last 3. They have played some quite difficult games. Barnsley's a challenge. They drew that one at home. Plymouth, of course, yesterday. Who was that? Peterborough as well. These are 3 difficult sides. 3 very difficult sides, and they've had to be challenged against them, and they haven't ever been outplayed in those. They showed quality, or enough quality to be encouraged from those 3. Like I said, as for Plymouth, they remain top of the table, at least until Sheffield Wednesday play that game in hand. But there we go, Plymouth 3, Pompey 1. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of that one. So Ipswich 2, Sheffield Wednesday 2. The XG for the game 1.27 to Sheffield Wednesday's 0.51. I had to double check that, but it is right. 0.51 for Sheffield Wednesday. A really, really quite low XG for Darren Moore's side. Potentially a little bit of concern, especially when you look at how the game ended. They were 2-0 up, but free kicks at the heart of everything that Ipswich did positively going forward in the game yesterday. Broadhead and Davis with some quite spectacular dead balls. You can see a missed penalty for Ipswich quite early on in the game. Connor Chaplin stepped up and missed it. A bit of confusion. The linesman having to sort of speak to the referee about a call. Wes Burns went down. The penalty was given in the end. He missed it. A big chance. How is that going to be a reflection on the game going forward? I mean, short-term problems. The biggest chance for Sheffield Wednesday in the game came at quite the same moment. They scored both of their goals. 2-0 in quite quick succession. Really good balls into the penalty area, especially for the first one. Michael Smith, a brilliant, well-guided header from Windass. Of course, the creative player playing and actually a striker with Michael Smith in the game. A brilliant ball into the penalty area and a great header guided into the top right-hand corner. And then George Byers scored a ball. It was 2-0. George Byers scored a sort of a half volley, if you like, a good finish into the left-hand side, sort of a box-to-box player, getting into the penalty area, getting in with the action. He wasn't shy to get in there and get a really important goal, 2-0. I think it was George Byers, box-to-box is what he does. Then Broadhead. This free kick was something quite special. Really, really good. Of course, a permanent transfer from Everton in the January transfer window, waiting for him to make a really big impact. He did it. And a time to sort of score his first goal in a Town shirt. This was it. This really was it. A great goal to make it 2-1 from a dead ball. At 2-1 at half-time, scoring 2 minutes before half-time. They say it, a cliche in football, the perfect time to score. And then in the 51st minute, you can see straight after pretty much half-time, Leif Davis goes and buries, again, another very good dead ball. So there we go. That is pretty much what happened in the game from that perspective. There were more chances, you can see, in that second half. Ipswich were pretty much the better side going forward. Sheffield Wednesday having a couple of moments. But you can see, really, I look at the XG and we'll look at the stats as well. They do also reflect that. 8 shots, only 3 on target, not much possession. Wednesday, when they went 2-0 up, you looked like they were going to get away with it. But when you drop points in the end, you go, could they have been better going forward? Could they have offered more in the attacking third? And you feel they should have done. 57% possession to Ipswich, 12 shots, 6 on target, 6 corners to 2 as well. So everything going forward, Ipswich in the end did trump them. But it is another draw. And of course, that gap is now fairly wide, with Sheffield Wednesday also having that game in hand as well. You feel as though that top 2 could be a little bit quite difficult for Ipswich to break into. But it is a point against a side who were top of the league, of course, Wednesday. They could still be with that game in hand. They've got to play shortly. But it is a good point, considering they were 2-0 down. But at this point in the season, at this point, where they find themselves, a win is massive. If only Connor Chaplin had tucked away that penalty in the 19th minute. But maybe the whole complexion of the game would have changed at that point anyway. You just don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. But it does finish 2-2 in the end. And how does that feel? Let me know in the comment section down below, Ipswich and Sheffield Wednesday fans. Because I feel, like I said, although it's a really good point, you're sort of stuck in sort of two minds there, because you did need to go and win the game. Never going to be easy. It's going to be a huge challenge, but you felt you needed to. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Or in the end, on reflection, you go, we'll take that. It probably does feel a little bit like a win. Sheffield Wednesday as well, maybe a little bit poor when it comes to their output going forward. In fact, I got some more stats as well. 8 shots, 0 big chances as well. I didn't miss any because I didn't actually have any big chances in the game. I thought, not much. They did have 2 corners, but Ipswich had 6. He suggests they had more of it. You can see total shots well off target, most of them anyway. A couple of block shots, didn't hit the woodwork, of course, at all in the game, neither side. But a bit lacklustre for Sheffield Wednesday. You feel they could have done a little bit better, and they have done better in previous weeks. But of course, you wouldn't even have to say this if they held on and didn't concede 2 pretty brilliant free kicks. You couldn't do much about, other than, of course, not give away the foul in the first place. But there we go. If it is Ipswich 2, Sheffield Wednesday 2, let me know in the comment section down how both of you are feeling. Both of those fan bases there. Right then, around the grounds, a quick run through of all the other games, because it's only fair we chat about those. Normally we only do 4, but we've done 5, so 1 less to speak about when looking at the around the grounds, because there were lots of drama. There really, really was. You can see here, Barnsley 2, Cambridge United 0. Mark Bonner in some trouble. I think he is. Barnsley getting back to winning ways 2-0, even though they did have a red card. Cambridge did huff and puff in the final 20-30 minutes. Maybe having that extra man did play a part. However, they're in deep trouble. They're in the relegation zone now. Once again, quite not comfortably. Let's have a little look. It's not 3 points. It's not comfortable, but it's in there with a bit of a margin, and too much of a margin for Cambridge United standards, and how much they would want to be, which is, I imagine, not very much. In a relegation 6-pointer, Morecambe 1, Green Rovers 1. Once again, heartbreak in the last minute. Surely, Ferguson now, big Duncan Ferguson is thinking, if we score a goal in the 81st minute, I know we've got an unfortunate, quite bad track record of conceding goals in the last minute to kill games off. Cole Stockton scores in the 89th minute. So there we go. That is the frustration and the unluckiness of Forest Green Rovers and their late heartbreaks continuing. Burton 1, Exeter City 0. Disappointing for Exeter, but for Burton, another really, really good win. They didn't have the majority of the ball. They weren't great going forward, but when they had the chance, they took it. And Burton now on a really good run. That resurgence is continuing as they stay away from that bottom 4. Charlton 1, Fleetwood 2. Again, Charlton, you felt they could get more from the game. Lots of things going on at Charlton off the field, as we always are speaking about right now. Holden's future potentially in doubt. Lots of off the field key figures leaving the football club after a breakdown in talks with an ownership or change of ownership that wasn't actually very popular with the fans anyway. It's going to be 2-1 in the end, though. Fleetwood did take their chances. They won the game 2-1. Lincoln City win against Bristol Rovers. The Rovers doom and gloom, and Joey Barton's frustrations does continue. Lincoln much better than their opposition in this game, and their high-flying Lincoln City, a positive January transfer window. Jake gets excited. Jake, you're probably watching this. If you're not, then you won't ever see it, but Jake Tong's going to be very, very pleased with that. 1-0 to Lincoln City, and the buzz continues. The players just popping it about with ease. Shrewsbury 3, Port Vale 2. Shrewsbury are on fire. Absolutely on fire. 6 wins on the bounce. They're only 3 points away from the top 6. How crazy is that? They beat Port Vale 3-2 in that one. And finally, Cheltenham 0, Accrington 0. I might have said 0-0. I might have done. I don't know. It had 0-0 all over it, didn't it? It did have 0-0, and it was 0-0 in the end. Such a 0-0 game, unfortunately. That's the way it is. And you can see by looking at the league table now, the bottom 4, Morecambe, Accrington, Cambridge and Forest Green Rovers. That top 6, Plymouth now once again top of the tree. Sheffield Wednesday, of course, drawing that game with Ipswich does see them drop to 2nd, but they have got that game in hand. Ipswich 3rd, Bolton 4th, Derby County lose the game, but still in 5th. Barnsley back to winning ways after a draw before. They now are in 6th spot, or remain actually in 6th spot. Wycombe, Shrewsbury, Peterborough United with a very disappointing and humbling final defeat. They're also still in the mix. Oxford, we're just not very good at football. Anyway, please leave a like if you did enjoy it. Please do subscribe as well if you enjoyed the more games with more action. Also, let me know as well, but most importantly, how are you feeling? I'll be replying and responding to all of those as per usual. Until next time, I've been Jack. This has been the Young Fan Podcast. I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care.